Hello, I'm Darren again. Welcome to my Mental Health Information and Awareness channel. Now, today's topic comes from the question, what is Narcissistic Abuse Syndrome? How do I know if I have it? So, we're going to look at 6 common symptoms of Narcissistic Abuse Syndrome. Now, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please check out my other videos on mental health related topics and please consider subscribing to my channel. So, first of all, let's be clear, a syndrome is not a diagnosis. A syndrome, in this sense of the word, is the term given when a number of people experience similar effects, similar emotional or mental health difficulties following similar experiences. Exposure to similar situations. For example, imposter syndrome, that is not a diagnosis. Also, if you consider yourself to have narcissistic abuse syndrome, it doesn't follow that you're going to have it for the rest of your life, that there's something wrong with you. A lot of things experienced, as uncomfortable as they are normal. They're normal given the abnormal situation you may have been in. With the right help, with the right support, recovery is possible. Now, I also think it's important to recognize that not all abusers are narcissists. Some are just twats, okay? And as much as not all narcissists are abusive. But for today, we're going to look specifically at the effects of the abuse inflicted by a malignant narcissist, someone with, say, narcissistic personality disorder. And also recognize that abuse can come in many different forms. It can be physical, sexual, emotional, financial, spiritual. There's many different types. Sometimes it can come from just the one person. Other times it comes from a collection of people over a period of time. Because abusers, they don't just have to be partners. They can be work colleagues, they can be parents, siblings, they can be anyone. So narcissistic abuse syndrome, if you think of it this way, it's a series of emotional responses, behaviors, beliefs associated after having been exposed to continued abuse from a narcissist. Now, as much as there are similarities in people, reactions, behaviors, and so on, people may react or experience these things differently. Some may form a very strong loyalty or bond to their abuser. Now, in cases like that, we're talking about trauma bonding, codependency, and so on. But for today's video, the assumption is that the abuser is a malignant narcissist. The abused has left, ended the relationship. Now, here are 6 reactions common to the narcissistic abuse. So firstly, there can be constant rumination over what happened, rumination over the abuser. These thoughts can be invasive, intrusive, they can be distressing, especially so when someone finds themselves being continually triggered. Now, a trigger is an emotional or a physical response. It's something that reminds us of a past situation, a past traumatic event, because we remember how it felt. It's like we're right back there, or as I sometimes put it, it's yesterday's threat is present today. And these can lead to flashbacks, reliving those traumatic events over and over again. And these can affect sleep patterns, either difficulty getting to sleep, difficulty staying asleep. It can affect diet, a loss of appetite, or constant binge eating, comfort eating. So secondly, there's avoidance. Now, when we think or feel of something really unpleasant, anxiety, shame, fear, guilt, an unpleasant situation, a memory, something we'd rather not think about. I think the first thing we think about is, how do I avoid this? What gets me out of this? And this can lead people to be in a constant state of alert, a constant state of hypervigilance, which leads me on to the third one. It can leave someone feeling very isolated and alone. Because remember, during that relationship, someone may have found themselves isolated from others, so that the narcissist could keep control over them. And after breaking away, the narcissist, more than likely, they're going to spread lies, spy on them, stalk them, still try to control them. If they can't control their victim, they will try and control how others see them, how others treat them. The victim is aware of this, so they may try to avoid other people, mutual friends, things like that, for fear they've been in contact with their ex, or for fear that information may be passed on to them. They fear they've been recruited as agents of the narcissist, or flying monkeys as they're commonly referred to. So they may feel they're safer on their own, even though they may need healthy, supportive relationships with others, especially after what happened. If they do meet someone new, if they do meet a new partner, a new friend, whatever, that hypervigilance tends to kick in as they watch to see, is this new person another abuser? Fourthly, that person may have difficulty managing their boundaries. They are either too lax or they're too rigid. Because remember, long-term exposure to narcissistic abuse has meant that boundaries have been constantly eroded, ignored, not just crossed, but in many cases actively violated. So the person may lack the confidence to assert themselves in the way that perhaps they once did. Well, on the other side of that, some have been so continually invalidated and criticised that their boundaries are now far too rigid. Someone disagrees with them and they become righteously indignant. Someone disagrees with them, they don't feel heard or understood. It's like they feel as if they're being told they're wrong, they're bad. They feel the same way as they did when the narcissist would find fault and ridicule them. Fifthly, and this is going to sound a little strange, but there can be rumination over whether or not they should return to the abuser. This second guessing over whether or not they made the right decision. How much of what went wrong was really their fault? If they returned, would it be better? The narcissist generally isn't helping this, particularly when they go through that hoovering stage, that love bombing, trying to win them back. Because remember, during that relationship, everything was their fault. The other person really did love them, and etc., etc. I liken it to being brainwashed. Constant manipulation, blame shifting, nonsensical reasoning and threats. Coming out of a toxic, unhealthy relationship often means having to unlearn a lot of the things you've been led to believe. It's, if you will, it's like a process of unbrainwashing. And lastly, there's a constant state of anxiety and depression. Anxiety fueled by constant uncertainty, error, fault finding, risk assessing, and a sense of helplessness. A depression fueled by shame over what happened, for maybe staying too long, for allowing themselves to be treated the way they were, worrying what others might be saying about them, what might be thinking about them. A lot of internalized anger and resentment, not just towards their abuser, but sometimes towards themselves for always giving in, and a sense of hopelessness. That second guessing themselves, blaming themselves, doubting themselves, that sense of disconnection, the thinking habits are all around self-condemnation. So, there are 6 signs of having been exposed to long-term narcissistic abuse.